which ones are going to work in the least amount of time and the least amount of money.
I can see the whole wide world with these two eyes, and I can be whoever I want to be, 'cause it's my life.
Thank you for attending, and thanks for the visitors too. And next month, I'll let you know that we have the top 10 management tips, and there's a few tech tips in there as well. So people who are regular members will want to make sure they come, and maybe some of the people who aren't regular, you may or may not get an invite. So if you do, you might want to consider it. And those of you who are not regular, and even those who are regular, I would like to know if you have any other ideas for topics. But I also don't want to cut into these guys' time. So I'm going to put that out there, and then at the end of it, when they're done, and I'll let them let us know when they're done, I'll just try and stand up and keep you guys a few minutes longer if you're prepared to, and see if you have any other ideas for future topics as well. Also going into the year in the fall. So I'm going to sit down. I'm Randy, by the way. Peter's going to do a really brief intro, and then he's going to let them introduce themselves. But I'll stop so we can get on with the presentation.
Yes, thank you all for coming. This is Mr. Josh Spurrell. I am going to leave it for him to introduce himself because I'm sure he can do a lot better job than I can. So thank you.
So yeah, Peter, thanks for having me here today, guys. So my name is Josh Spurrell from Spurrell and Associates Chartered Professional Accountants, and after talking with Peter, the two options were trust account reporting or how to get to the top of Google. And I guess nobody wants to know about trust account reporting, so we're only going to talk about how to get to the top of Google and how to market your professional practice. So I had an interesting path of becoming a chartered accountant. So I actually ran a small construction company before I was a CA. So before I had my business degree, before I was a CA, once upon a time I had to hire professionals to try to help me as well, because I didn't know what I was doing either. I've come to, our entire firm is set up to help small businesses, and it's super important to me, not just doing accounting but making sure businesses succeed. And really, when you drill down to it, the stats for entrepreneurs are pretty bleak. Industry Canada will tell you that 50% of all Canadian small businesses will fail within 5 years of starting. And those are the most optimistic numbers you can find on the subject. That's why I have those ones on my website. But there's a lot of other stats out there that will show 80 to 90% failure rate. Now, does this apply to law firms? Maybe the failure rate isn't as high. I see with a lot of law firms, medical doctors, often they stay in business because they have a high value skill, but usually what ends up happening is they're paid far less than individuals who actually have jobs and they're not very successful at it. But that being said, I have dentists that fail, there's lawyers that fail, it happens a lot. So the rate of failure for Canadian small businesses is a lot higher than people think. And why this issue is so passionate to me is that I think a lot of people don't quite understand. They just hear, businesses fail, and that's kind of trivial. They think it's like a video game, you hit the reset button, but it's not that trivial. When businesses fail, oftentimes, as the accountant, I'm left seeing what the pieces are, and afterwards. And there's families who, blow their entire life savings. They go bankrupt. It ends in depression, or families breaking up over it. So it's really important to me because I end up seeing that as the accountant after, because we have to file right to the bitter end. And that can be kind of heartbreaking. And a lot of people probably don't know how important this issue is to the Canadian economy. So some stats that I'll give you, 5% of the Canadian population are self-employed. So 5%. So every 100 people that you see, 5% are self-employed. And then the other stat is 50% of all jobs in Canada are created by small businesses. So we're talking, 5% are direct owners and 50% are employed by small businesses. And we're talking a failure rate of 50%. So you can start to gravitate on how big of an effect this is in the Canadian economy. We'll see a lot in the federal election coming up about pipelines, should we build it, should we not, or how we're going to do fund education and things like that are election issues. But how many times have you ever heard the politicians say, what about the small business failure rate, and what are we going to do about it? And it's an incredibly pervasive issue. So if you can imagine that there was, let's put this into perspective, if there was a type of cancer that affected 5% of the people, and 50% of the people were affected by these people, it would start to hit home on how significant this is for the Canadian population. And myself, I've been running, studying, and advising small businesses for close to 2 decades now. And really, at the end of the day, businesses only fail for really 3 reasons. They fail because they can't attract enough customers, they run out of cash, or they can't get the right team. So if you can solve those 3 issues in small businesses, you'd probably have a 80 or 90% success rate in businesses. All the other problems, if you put them together, don't amount to a whole bunch. So I started my accounting career really focused on number 2, making sure that people don't run out of cash. That's one of the things that we have to do. But as we gravitated more towards doing business plans and CFO type work and advisory and consulting work, we realized that we need to attach the KPIs for the key performance indicators for what number 1 is that most businesses fail because they can't attract enough customers. And what can we do about that? I go back through my business career, and when I started my business career, marketing was a little bit different. It was this much for a bold line in the yellow pages, it was this much for a little square, this much for a half page, and this much for a full page. Now, as marketing has become so much more complex, there are so many other options for businesses to do. And the problem is, and this is going to sound strange, all of those marketing initiatives that you usually hear about, usually they work. You might say, well, why is that a problem? All these marketing initiatives work. The problem is when you have so many marketing initiatives that work, business owners can't really ascertain which ones are going to work in the least amount of time and the least amount of money. And so, whether you have enough money to write the biggest check or not, at the end of the day, business owners, they only have 168 hours in the week. So if you get, some marketer who's saying you should direct message every single person on Instagram, well, yeah, it works. And the ROI of that is infinite because it costs you nothing. But how are you going to do that as a busy lawyer? How are you going to devote, 20 or 30 hours of your week to some sort of direct marketing campaign? So, what I've done over the last few years is just gone through the research and discern which initiatives have the biggest payback in terms of, the least amount of time and the least amount of money. And, I do this, I have a lot of clients that are professionals. I do a lot of medical professional work and a lot of construction guys, but lucky for you guys are lawyers. I do some lawyers as well. And the way I market my business should be almost identical to the way that you guys would market your business. The way you'd market a CPA firm would be very similar to the way you'd market a law firm. So who here wants to learn how to get to the top of Google? Who thinks that would be useful in their firm to know how to get to the top of Google? Okay, so we're going to go through some processes. I'll warn you right now, I don't have a silver bullet. What I have works, and it works 100% of the time, but it only works if you do. So it's not easy, and it doesn't matter how big of a check you can write, it's not going to overcome kind of the work that's got to be done. And also when I'm done, my quest for business owners, I have 7 what I think should be required reading for entrepreneurs. I'll give these away for you guys at the end too. So those are my treat for you guys.
Did we get a copy of your presentation?
A copy of my presentation? I have 1 slide, and you guys can have it. I've simplified it down into 1 infographic because if I have multiple slides and I try to walk my clients through this, it doesn't go that well. So I've made it as simple as possible, and yeah, it's saved on this computer, and they were telling me that you guys could save it to some sort of website and people could access it. So, but yeah, it's 1 slide. Yeah.
And for those of you who aren't members of the section and can't access that, let me know, and I'll send you a copy because you paid your price to come here.
Do you have like other people in your firm that you want to learn it, or just for yourself to remember it?
This is for me.
Okay. Yeah.
Nobody else cares.
Okay.
That's right.
Can you guys actually see this? I don't know if I can
No.
scale it the way I want to scale
The
it.
dark is part of the LRT, because it's always broken.
That's right. Well, you can still go to escalator, just have to
I
watch
wish I
it.
could scroll.
No, we were told that
Can you
that's
scroll?
against the codes.
Let me scroll.
Just otherwise from walking up against the
Right.
yeah, city centers like this.
If you guys wanna grab munchies while during the presentation, go ahead.
No. We're gonna have to do our best with this.
And you click and drag the picture to move it.
Yeah. Oh.
Whoa.
This is why I bring Cole, CPA student, and cameraman extraordinaire in technology. Yeah, jack of all trades here. So what we have